Hey, Chief.
Hey, Cyrus, what are we going to talk about today?
So today we're going to talk a little bit about how comic books compare to other mediums.
Okay.
So there are a few different mediums that we can compare ourselves to.
Sure.
We have novels, right, on one end, where it's only writing.
Yes.
And then ones that also have visuals attached to it. Right above us, we would have comic books.
Yes.
Which is us, exactly.
Yeah.
We have cartoons. We have movies and TV. And
Yes.
then we have video games, right?
Yes.
So how do we compare to these other mediums?
Okay. Well, I think they're all a form of, first of all, they're all entertainment, medium
Yes.
at its core. Second of all, they're all storytelling medium at its
Sure.
core. You're trying to get some story element across. Video games may not be so much, depending on what kind of game it is.
Sure.
Like if it's Tetris, there's no real story to it.
Right, but if it's The Last of Us, there definitely is a
Yes, there's something like that. But video games has moved more and more into the storytelling aspect these days.
Right.
I think the greatest advantage that comic books have over these medium is that it is very cheap to produce.
Yes.
Comparatively. I think novel may be the only one that's a little cheaper. Because just one guy sitting there writing. You have a computer, you have a notepad, you can begin. Comic book, you have to buy some art tools if you are an artist that just want to draw it yourself.
Right.
But compared to cartoon, it is drastically cheaper.
Yes.
One or two guys can make a comic book happen. Compared to movies, a television, definitely a lot cheaper.
Yes.
And now with video games was probably involves the most amount of people and time and effort to produce nowadays. And experts in different fields needs to come together to exact very precise work. Because I used to know somebody that works at EA, and his job was what you describe as a printer,
Yes.
which is very interesting. Because basically every department brings them their data. The art department, the sound music department, the programming department, and he has to make sure it fits and print out into the final program that can fit onto a disc or cartridge.
Right. There's a lot of considerations.
Yeah, a lot more considered technical aspect involved in video gaming. But of course, that's not our field of expertise here. So I don't want to dig too deep into that. But back to comic book, what makes it interesting is that it can be done with one person. If you can write and draw, an idea in your head can be implemented all the way through.
Exactly.
And that's the greatest advantage of comic book. One guy can do all of that.
Sure. Also, because you're using still images,
Yes.
you can really convey exactly what you want the reader
That's
to
right.
see at any point in time.
Yes.
Compare it to other mediums where someone can look away a little bit easier, or it may not be exactly framed in the exact way
Sure.
you want it to be.
Yeah.
With comics, they can see exactly what the person intended.
Yes. When they say one man vision of a story, it can definitely be contained as one man vision.
Absolutely.
And you can also go and make corrections very, very easily.
Sure.
Unlike TV and a movie, when they need to make a reshoot, it's sometimes millions of dollars just to make a few minutes of frames they gotta put back into a film.
Sure.
So that's one of the greatest advantages of being a comic medium, storytelling medium. You can also not be constrained by, well, we can't sign this actor, because he's not free to work on the project.
Sure.
Or we don't have enough budget to do special effects on whatever we want to execute. Whatever's your imagination, whatever comes out of you as talent or skill, is what people can see directly.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
On top of that, too, I feel like being a still image, it's something that's a lot easier to market because then you already sort of have an idea about how they're going to be posed and positioned.
Yes.
And you can always try to hit that optimal point for either its action or whether it's that dynamic contrast when
Yes.
you're having an argument or a conversation or a walk.
Yes.
Every time you're trying to find the most optimal position for everything. And I think that's really great.
Yeah.
When you look at a novel, for example, you really have to put a lot of words into trying to explain exactly what you want
Yes.
the reader to see and understand.
Yes. Well, the trick to writing a novel is more about giving the readers enough information so their imagination can take over, and then fill in the rest of the gap.
Sure.
Comic books, you are filling in that gap yourself.
Yes.
You control every aspect of it. But then at the same time, the disadvantage to a comic book, I would say, is that sometimes it is locked into only your own imagination and your own thought and your own level of skill. You're not a competent artist, you may not able to get the frame right. You may not get the action across as exciting as you want it to. Because when you talk about TVs and movies, when they do an action scene, they sometimes have stunt coordinators that can come in and says, my expertise is making sure how this shot looks great when two guys are fighting each other.
That's exactly right.
As a comic book artist, you kind of just go, okay, I kind of think this is how, unless you're a martial artist yourself.
Right.
A
lot of things to consider there.
Yes.
I feel too, like with comics, it's important to take into account some of the other disadvantages to it or constraints.
Yes.
Obviously, you still have time constraints,
Yes.
just like any medium.
Yeah.
With the comic book industry, you're trying to put out a book a month in general, right?
Yes.
And so that book a month is usually a 3-month window, if I'm not mistaken.
In the comic book industry, back in Marvel, when I was working in Marvel, it's a 3-month ahead before the book gets released.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if you make it in January, you might be expecting to see it in maybe April or so.
Sometime March or April. Yeah, because it's basically, from what I remember, it is that, it's 1 month of production, and then it gets sent to the printer, and that could take a month depending if they can fit you into the slot,
Right.
time frame of getting produced. And then another month for distribution to hit the shelf, and then that final month is basically letting the book circulate,
Right.
Through different medium, whether it's newsstands or comic book shop. So it's about a 3-month window for that, and then the process begins over.
Sure.
Of course, the time you're done with one book, you're producing the next one. So generally, it's about a 1-month gap. That is definitely a constraint. Which is why Marvel used to have the assembly line process of having writers, pencilers, inkers, letterers, colors all be a stage of the process to move that along.
Sure. It definitely can speed things up.
Yes.
Additionally, you have to think about the amount of detail that you're going to add into each individual page, right?
Yes.
I assume that most artists aren't going to put as much effort into the middle of the book as they would at the beginning or at the end.
Well, there was kind of an old saying, with not just comic books but movies, but if you can start off strong, you can end off strong. Then that's where you kind of really hold the audience's attention. So sometimes in between you can slack off a little bit. Of course, not recommending people should slack off, but if you go, okay, there's time constraint, I got to get this done quickly, you can kind of trim off a little bit. Sometimes it's background work. Sometimes it's just kind of, instead of drawing a full body shot, you can do half a body just to get some of the shortcuts in to move things along a little bit.
Right. And just because it's a little bit cheaper doesn't mean that there aren't the same kind of pre-production concerns that you have to make when it comes to the writing process, when it comes to making sure that the art is up to the proper level. All those little adjustments that need to be made are still there. So there's definitely still a lot of work that goes in, and it can still be a labor of love.
It's always a lot of work. Of course, if you're doing a personal comic book, you're not constrained by time. You can take a whole year to do it. You can treat it as your Mona Lisa and all of that.
Sure.
There's no problem with that. But of course, when you're doing a professional commercial comic book, time is always kind of the deadlines are always hitting you and always hitting you. You're kind of working around the clock.
Yeah, makes sense. Overall, the general cost isn't as much, but I think it's a really excellent place to be, and I think comic books are a fantastic place to publish.
Yes,
there are lots of great ways for you to get into the industry, whether you're an artist or whether you're a colorer or a letterist or all these other different ways to do it.
Yes.
So it's, if you have the time, if you have the interest, there's definitely a way for you to get involved. Where maybe in other industries it can be a little bit more difficult. Like if you want to go be an actor, suddenly you have to, have the skills in order to do it. You have to be in the right area to be able to do that.
Yeah, a lot of them have to move to, close to Hollywood and California to be able to even find very, small, like, side gigs, sometimes just appear in the background of a shot, So, yeah, so it's for something like that, you have to be location driven.
Sure.
Comic books, not as much. You're at home, in front of your desk, you can begin. You can be as young as a junior high school kid. They just love to draw and start your own comic book. Or you can be even someone who's retired and says, I've had a good run in the banking system, but I remember really, growing up with this stuff and I really love it. But now I got some money in my pocket. I have ideas. I can either hire a writer or write it myself. Or if I don't know how to draw, hire an artist. You know, it's really a very good medium to implement ideas and thoughts and stories and all sorts of fun stuff.
Sure. What really amazes me also is how different IPs can exist in multiple different mediums and how they can even coexist together.
Oh, yeah.
Like, a great example of this would be The Last Airbender. It's a fantastic cartoon. I think one of the best ever.
Yes.
I love it. And I love that they put it on Netflix because now I had the opportunity to watch it again.
Yes.
But one of the great things about it is that they then made I think it was a 4-part comic book series that delved into some of the further questions that people had. And it was well drawn. It was very interesting.
Sure.
And it captured some of that same energy and vibe that the cartoon did. And so one of the things that was great about it is that they didn't have the budget to, make a full another season of the cartoon, but they were able to answer some of those lingering questions.
Yes. Comic book can be there to fill the gap, more easily than animation. Because animation, you go, oh, we're missing that. We made some mistakes. But once again, lots of money goes into correcting those mistakes. Comic book, boom, I don't like this page, crumble it up, throw it away. Spend another, maybe just a day, and you got another one finished. Also, there are things like light novels in Japan, which is very popular, where they do have, art inserted between text, just to kind of help people visualize a little better.
Right.
But I think overall, as a creator, you have to decide what is it that you want to do in terms of approaching the way you want to tell a story to get your ideas across. Comic book for me, it's kind of something I found that I say this is what I like, this is what works. I'm an artist. I like to tell stories, so I can do two things, two major aspects of it to get what I need to get across. But of course, the really great thing about comic book is that you can start anytime.
Sure.
You could be a junior high school student that just sits there with your notepad and start drawing, and you got a comic book. Or let's say if you're a retired banker, and says, well, I had a good time in the financial industry, but I always enjoy reading comic books as a kid. I want to try something now. Now that I have some money in my pocket, you can either write it yourself, hire a writer, hire an artist, and boom, you got a project out there too. So there's no real constraint to what you can do in a comic book, and that's probably what I really, really enjoy about this medium.
Right.
One guy can make it happen. Very few people can make it happen. And anytime you have something that doesn't come across, they go, ooh, that doesn't feel right. You can easily make changes and corrections, and then not have to spend a lot of money and time like movies or TVs. And then be able to move on and do more.
I think it's definitely an exciting place to be, like I've said before.
Yes.
And as long as you have the passion and the interest to do it, I think it can be something that many people can be successful in. But overall, I think every medium has its strengths and its weaknesses, and I think certain people are built for it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well, ultimately I do comic book because I like comic books. Right. I really enjoy the process of it. As opposed to there are people who really enjoy making movies.
Right.
There are people who's passionate about making movies. There are people who are passionate about, writing novels. And like I mentioned earlier, I have a friend who went and worked for EA in the video game industry. He's been doing that ever since he graduated college.
Sure.
So at the end, if you want to tell a story, you want to get ideas across to people, find what you love, find what excites you, and why is it that you want to get across to people. I think it's all part of the entire process of creation. And if you can find that medium that works for you, fantastic.
I agree. Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for watching the video. We definitely appreciate it. If you get the opportunity, definitely check out our website and see some of the comics that we made. So far, we have probably 6 different properties on the website, and many of them have over 10 to 12 different comics that you can read. So we would definitely appreciate that. Definitely donate to us using PayPal or use our Subscribe Star if you guys are interested. And definitely like and subscribe on our video down below. So we appreciate you so much.